afternoon, and welcome to another edition of Forever Young, where we believe that age is just a number. This is a show that is a part of House of Hope Atlanta, our Hope TV network, and I'm your co host, Dr. Sharon Mitchell. I'd like to welcome you to another edition. And before we go further, I'd like to introduce my co host, Ms. Jean Hendricks, and she'll say hello, and then we'll come back with some more information. Jean, glad to see you again. Welcome to the.
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. As always, I'm delighted to be here and share this podium with you.
Jean, as you know, we usually have a three show host. Our primary host, David Linton, is absent today. And so the two ladies, Miss Jean and I, will take the helm today and participate as part of our production on today. Without further ado, before we go into our program and introduce our phenomenal guest today, we'd like to first have Jean share some words of wisdom with us. If you would, Jean, do you have something you'd like to share with us today?
Yes, of course. Thank you. Today's quote has to do with preparation. Preparation is defined as things that you do on time. You should spend time preparing for something. Abraham Lincoln said, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." Do something today that your future self will thank you for. Education is a passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for today. Back to you, Dr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Jean. I'm so glad you talked a little bit about preparation. And as we know, over the last 15 months or so, having experienced a pandemic, something that none of us have ever experienced, we have found what is important in terms of preparation. So for today's show, we have come up with ways we are going to talk about how you can prepare for the future. And in preparing, we're talking about the things that many of us as African Americans don't like to talk about. And that's about the end of life decisions, end of life planning, and what we need to do and have in place when we talk about what happens to us as we move towards the end of life stages. And before I introduce the subject overall, I'd like to say that we've got a guest that will participate today, Ms. Sherry Allen, who is an attorney. She is the founding and managing partner of Allen Law, LLC. She's located in Atlanta, Georgia. She received a doctorate of jurisprudence degree from Indiana University State School of Law and her bachelor's of arts degree from Indiana University. She has experience as a trial lawyer, catastrophic personal injury lawyer, and she donates quite a bit of her time advising professionally in terms of the Georgia Legal Services Program and providing access to justice to low-income and disadvantaged citizens, and is a long-standing member of the Georgia Willis Project, where she helps senior citizens with end-of-life and estate planning decisions. And it's because of this kind of background that Attorney Allen is going to share with us today about the importance of end-of-life planning and estate planning decisions. And so without further ado, and she'll give a little bit more about herself and her background, I'd like to certainly extend a hearty House of Hope Forever Young welcome to Attorney Sherry Allen. Sherry, would you come into the screen and say hello to our audience?
Hi, everyone. And I'm no stranger to House of Hope, so I'm glad to see everybody.
And so, Sherry, since you have so graciously agreed to participate on today's segment as it relates to end-of-life planning, can you first tell us, because I didn't do you any justice, I know that there's so much more to you and your background. Can you tell us about your business and how long you've been in business? Just to give the audience a little bit about who you are and what kind of additional services that you provide.
Well, I've been a licensed attorney for 30 years, but I've been in private practice since 2003. And I started in private practice in California. And so I'm licensed in Georgia, Washington, and California. My emphasis has always been helping the underserved and giving access to justice no matter what area of law I practice in. I'm primarily a trial lawyer. I represent disabled veterans and civilians extensively. I do a lot of pro bono work with the Wills Project with Georgia, trying to make sure that people who ordinarily wouldn't have access to legal services are able to plan their end of life decisions and things like that. I grew up in a Christian environment and grew up rather poor. And so I know how important it is to give back and provide legal services many times on a pro bono basis.
That's wonderful. Jean, I'm going to throw the ball to you for the next question.
Okay. Sherry, if you could be a little bit more specific and just tell us what would you like for us to know more about your business particularly? Be more specific about your business.
First and foremost, what I'd like to know, people to know that I'm a Christian attorney and I walk the talk. I spend a lot of time also ministering in what I do. So what I tell people, I have come from a family of ministers, and I tell people that my ministry has always been the courtroom, that is what I do. So I represent people who have had wrongful death, nursing home negligence, suing nursing homes, and trying to help the elderly who may have been victimized in a nursing home, medical malpractice, catastrophic trucking accidents. That's a lot of what I do. When I represent disabled veterans, what I'm trying to help, many times, probably half of the veterans I represent are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. And so I'm trying to help them get compensation to help provide for their families after they've given their life to our country.
Very good. Thank you.
Very, very hands-on if you call me. I'm very devoted to representing people.
Right. Very good. Thank you so much. Back to you, Dr. Mitchell.
So I have the next question, Sherry. Can you, over the last year, we found that many people found themselves unprepared for changes to life due to COVID. This was especially true in our communities. Tell us how COVID has changed how the events surrounding
Well, what I have done a lot more of is helping people. A lot of times in our communities, I have found people haven't drafted wills. And so I've had to counsel a lot of families in the last year or so who have died without wills, intestate succession, what happens to their mother, their aunts, their grandmother's affairs, trying to go through the court system when it's a large enough estate for probate. But I've had to give a lot of advice about that. Also with helping people get power of attorneys, financial power of attorneys and advanced healthcare directives, just in case they are incapacitated and unable to operate or do things for themselves. That has been a large focus that previously people haven't really thought about the same way. But in this last year, all the time, it doesn't matter if I'm at work or in some social setting, I am generally asked about how to prepare things for end of life, or what do I do if I get sick, or how do things proceed if I die and I don't have a will. And so I encourage everyone to try at least to put your will in place.
Right, right. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
You had this epiphany based on what your grandmother had done. Saved money for 6 months, paid off debt, slept on the floor. And because of this conversion moment, you literally are sitting on the board of a bank that wouldn't have even given you a loan.
I was a pastor of a church. I was spending so much money dressing like a preacher, driving preacher cars. If I'm spirit filled, the same Holy Ghost that makes me shout can make me wait until I can afford a BMW, and stop giving money, donating money to big banks, paying them 18% interest for the right to use their credit card to buy something I can't afford. It's a mentality.
R. Kelly, is he muted or canceled for you?
I'm not canceling TP2.com because that's my joint. I'm not going to be able to do it.
Look, we're going to get all in there today. Going back to church. Are you ready to get in the house or are you ready to stay online?
I don't want to catch COVID. I'm ready, but I want to be safe.
Burnout in 2021, do you feel it?
I am going, not trying to get burnt out because I understand how it is. If you die today or tomorrow, your job description is going to be on somebody's Indeed.
Sherry, thinking about the end of life planning it is never easy. But when you're prepared, the conversations will be more bearable. Can you share with us what the end of life planning is?
Well, if you think about, just think about advanced care planning. What would you like to happen if you are no longer physically or mentally able to make decisions for yourself? And what would you like to happen if you have passed on? What would you like? Who would you like to have your things? How would you like your children cared for if you have children? If there's things you would like to leave to your grandchildren, what do you want to happen with your real estate? Maybe there's an organization that you really love. It could be church. It could be a charitable organization. Maybe you want, and you've spent a lot of your time donating your time there. Maybe you want to make sure that you can give something when you pass on for that. And so when you talk about end of life planning, what you're trying to do is make sure your wishes can go forward if something should happen to you, whether you're still living or whether you pass on.
Right. Now, let me just ask one other question, Dr. Mitchell. So do I hear you saying that I can write things down on my own and put them in a safe deposit box at home? Would that be the right thing to do?
Well, here's what I would suggest to you. You don't need a lawyer to do a will. There's several things that you need in order for a will to be effective, but you don't have to have a lawyer to do that. And so you have to have it in writing. You have to be over 14 years old. Create a will. You can create a will just as long as it's in writing. You don't have to type it up. You have to sign it, and you have to have two people witness that you signed it. That's all you really need. So you could have two people who are not going to take from your will. Be present, meaning you're not gifting them anything, but be present and write down what your wishes are. And that can be your will. It is really that simple, although there's a lot more formalized things. I'll tell you another thing you can do. I don't want to step on you on your conversation about it, though. Ask me the next question. I was going to tell you an easy way to gift things, too. You can take a picture and put that all in that same safe deposit box, as opposed to writing things in, and put their name on the back. And then your family will know, I want this to go to Jane. I want this to go to John, because you've taken a picture of things around your house that you would like to gift to them.
Okay.
Yeah, so it sounds like, Sherry, you're debunking some of our myths about having it written. Yeah, because we've always thought you had to have an attorney. So can you tell us why is it important for us to take these steps in terms of the end of life planning?
Okay, well, I'm not saying that's not important to have an attorney, but I'm just saying if you are unable to, a lot of people are unable to pay for it. There might not be somebody like me. Now, like I said, I do a lot of pro bono work with people, and there are, like in Georgia Legal Services and Atlanta Legal Aid, they will have somewhat of a form maybe that people can start to use. But you don't need to have all of that to have something valid that a court will recognize as your last will and testament. But you do need to make sure that you write it down, that you sign it, and it's witnessed by two people who are not taken.
And it does not have to be signed by power of attorney. No one else has to stamp it. You're saying just two other people has to sign it. No legal person has to sign it.
You don't have to have a notary, but it's good to have it notarized. I'm saying it
Right,
can
yeah,
still
that's
be
what I'm
enforced if it's not notarized. I would suggest that you get it notarized.
Right. Yeah,
And
that's what
the
I
two
did.
people sign in the presence of a notary. That's what I would suggest.
Right.
But let's say
Okay.
for that person who, because now sometimes you will have somebody who's ill and they may not have long, and there may not be anyone other than maybe a couple of people helping take care of them. And they're thinking, well, I wish I had done this. I wish I had done that. For that person who doesn't have the time, you can have things written down. You can sign it and have it witnessed, and maybe you don't have a notary there. So I'm not saying forego all of the legal things. I'm just saying if you are in a crunch, or if you're at like in the hospital or something like that, and you're starting to think about, this is how COVID has changed my business, and you're starting to think
Right.
about what you would like to have happen,
Yes.
you still can do that without thinking, I don't have $1,000. I don't have money to hire someone. That's what I'm saying. But I'm not saying, when we're talking to people now who are in present sense of mind, have time and can think about it, you should plan it out, do it the right way, and talk to your family about it. Don't, a lot of us want to think, well, we don't want to talk about death, but
Right.
it is first of all, it gives them some assurances that they're doing what you would like them to do. And in most families, that's very important. I will hear people say, well, I think this is what my mom would want, or I think this is what my dad would want. But if you've talked to them about it, they will already know, and show them, like I have 2 sons. My sons, they know I have a will. They know I have a power of attorney. They know I have healthcare directives. I've talked about who the trustees are, who the executors are. If something should happen to me, this is what you do. I'm a single mom. So I tell them, this is what you do. This is who you call. This is where everything is. That makes it a lot easier for people, if something should happen to you, to put their hands on it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, that is
It doesn't
so
have to be
important.
like mystical.
Yes. And that's what we find in our communities. Oftentimes we have not left instructions. And so we leave it up to chance for those we leave behind. If you're just joining, you're listening to Forever Young. This is another segment of Hope TV. We have with us today our guest who is sharing with us end of planning or end of life planning, and the importance of why you need to have information provided should something happen to you, whether you become hospitalized or you are moving towards an end of life stage. And oftentimes we find ourselves unprepared for these situations. And so we have with us this afternoon Ms. Sherry Allen, who is an esteemed attorney who works in this capacity, even on pro bono basis. So we're going to continue our conversation a little bit. Jean, I'll let you pick up with the next question, and then we'll hopefully be able to get a few more questions in before we have to cut off this.
Okay, then to tell us the difference between a living will and a living trust, including the process in order to get it done.
In Georgia, you can have a living will, but in Georgia, it's generally, as of 2007, the Georgia Advanced Healthcare Directive, which combined what used to be a living will with a durable power of attorney. So those two documents are put together, and they are an advanced healthcare directive, because what was happening in the living will, the living will could say what you wanted to happen, but then you couldn't give any actual real direction. One, it didn't take care of everything. So if you do an advanced healthcare directive, that will say what your wishes are, and you can spell out in there all of your wishes. Like, for example, when people talk about do not resuscitate, you can have scenarios as to in what situations you do and do not want to be resuscitated. But it also incorporates that power of attorney, which gives someone an ability to speak on your behalf to that doctor, to speak on your behalf, to tell, so they call it advanced healthcare directives. And if you had a living will and a power of attorney, it's grandfathered in, so it can still be recognized. But for the most part now, it's one document in Georgia. A living trust is different than that. Now, people still have living trust.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I think I understand a little bit better now. Thank you. Back to you, Dr.
Right.
Mitchell.
Now, Sherry, do they require you to do the advanced health directive when you go into the hospital? Is that now when they're requiring you to do that?
You're not required to do, but if you notice when you go to doctors, when you go to the hospital, they
Yes.
will ask you if you have one.
Right.
Because they would like to have that on file, because if there is a case where you cannot speak to the doctor on your own behalf, or you are unable to advocate for your own health care, they want to make sure that they are speaking to someone who you have already designated as the person that you want to handle those decisions for you. Because if you don't have that, then it does automatically go to next of kin, but it can go to next of kin, but you can have also designated with next of kin what situations you don't want to be resuscitated, what situations you do.
Okay.
But they always ask. I haven't been anywhere
Yes.
recently where a doctor hasn't said,
Right.
well, do you have an advanced healthcare directive, Ms. Allen?
Yes. That's why.
Yes.
Because I had to go for a procedure, and that was the question that they asked as well. That we're getting that whether we know it or not is something that the medical professionals want to be clear on who's the designee to make decisions for you when you're incapacitated and can't do that. So Sherry, can I move a little bit with the next question on when we talked about
Well, can I finish one thing there? At the
Go
hospital,
ahead.
they will have someone in social work. They'll have a form there. If you say, well, you don't have one, would like to, they will have someone come up from social work and they'll notarize and do all of that right there.
Wow. Okay. That's
Sorry.
good to know. Yeah. I know because we have a lot of people who talked about having been faced with decisions on COVID, and it was a situation. So that's why we're concerned with whether or not we're prepared and know what these particular procedures are and what they include.
Meet the scan, a simple procedure whose mission is to detect lung cancer early.
I'm here to save you.
But I feel fine.
That's great, but you may still be at high risk for lung cancer.
Oh man, that's a new fence.
If you smoke, early detection could save your life. Learn more at savedbythescan.org.
I want to ask you about the last will and testament, and what does that include?
Okay, your last will and testament, that's what goes into place when you pass away. And that's what most people typically have. Their last will and testament says how you want your property disposed of. In your last will and testament, it could talk about your financial kind of situations, who you want to get money. If you have life insurance, you may want your life insurance to be in your last will and testament. It can be separate and not be included and not be involved in your last will and testament at all. You can talk in there about burial. You can provide for children. You can provide for example, you can also, if you have a child or family members who are you're going to inherit from you, but you're concerned that they may spend money quicker than what you had planned for them to do, you can also set up a trust in that last will and testament where you have, yes, an executor who is handling a certain part, but a trustee who is going to dispense the your estate and dispense monies, dispense property, and you can put it on a schedule as to when they get it. For example, someone who has, like, say, young, let's say maybe you have an 18-year-old, and you're saying, if something happens to me, maybe I don't want them because they're maybe not mature enough to get it all at one time. If something happens to me, but what I want is maybe they get a certain amount of money, and then 5 years later they get another amount. Some parents put in there that some of the criteria is that they graduate from college before they can get a certain amount. There's a lot of things that you can provide for in your will, and your will can also be part of a trust document as well.
One other question. If someone has already prepared their will and they need to make a change to it, how is that done? They just give me an example. Give us an example of that. If they want people to make wills, I have a friend of mine who has made changes to her will, and I want to ask her, do you have to go through a lawyer? How is that done?
You can. A lot of people who've started with a lawyer, they will go to a lawyer, and the lawyer will make changes, and then their new will be the effective will, and their old will not be the will that's effective. And you're going through the same kind where you're signing it, you're dating it, you're having it attested to and witnessed as well. And I believe in DeKalb County, I'm almost positive in DeKalb County, you can put your will in the probate court. You can file it there so your family members can know, well, my will is filed with the court. If you're doing a written will, you've heard where people will say, well, we found one version, and then they later, because it's the last version that you do, which will be your last will and testament, will be your last legal version. Okay. And so you can make changes and things change, situations change. You may sell something that was a property in your will that you no longer have. Things change, and so you want to keep it updated.
Right. So do you recommend that people file their wills with the probate court, or just being at home? Is that the better way to do it?
You should do whatever you feel is safest for you, and where you think someone can put their hands on it. What I have, like I said, some people have filed theirs with probate court because that way no one's searching and looking through, their house and where is this and where is that, where do you think they kept it? But let's say if you're telling someone, I have a safe deposit box, John Doe has the key, and that is where my will is, and that's where my important papers are. Or you might have some kind of a fireproof box at your own house that has a key, and that you've locked them in there. It is very important to communicate it to someone, though, because what I've experienced, and unfortunately, I've had quite a few deaths in my family in the last few years, and some due to COVID. Going into someone's house, you're grief-stricken anyway, and you can't believe that they've passed on. And then one of the first things you're doing is trying to find out where their papers are, and so it's really tough to grieve and have to try to look through things, and it's emotional, trying to look through papers and look through drawers and things like that. So it's easier if there's some designated place and you've communicated that already to either family members or your executor who's going to handle that for you. I can give you a real life situation happened 2 days ago. I represented a veteran who passed away, and his son called me to see if I knew where his father's will was. He's in South Georgia. But if I knew where his father's will was, he said, because I looked in his phone and he had your number there, and I could see where he'd talked to you a lot. And he had told me over the years that I'm making changes to my will, I'm updating my will. He said, but we're looking through everything he has and we can't find it. We wonder, do you have it? In that case, the veteran had never given it to me, but I looked through my paperwork for the son, but I'm just saying he's passed on 2 years ago. I mean, not 2 years, 2 weeks ago. And they're still trying to find out where his will is and where all of his papers are.
Wow. Yeah, that's got to be a lot, for a family as they're going through the grief-stricken portion. Which is why we have you on to share with our audience the importance of designating and communicating what your desires are as you face these kinds of decisions, because certainly when someone is grief-stricken, it's hard to come up with what they knew expected from the person who made these decisions. I wonder, Sherry, you talked about the executor of the estate versus the trustee. Those are two. They can be different people, or do they have to be the same?
I recommend different people, but you can't have the same person, but I recommend different people. And I recommend that you have a backup executor if that person is unwilling or no longer, because sometimes someone may be incapacitated themselves by the time you pass away. So you have a successor executor in case that executor either cannot or is unwilling to do it. You have a trustee that, and they can be, and you can put the backup executor as a secondary trustee. I mean, it doesn't have to be the same person. And I think you should have them separate, because if there's a disagreement, then you have two separate people to try to come together. When I say disagreement, we're talking about the heirs, because the executor can be an heir, but generally the trustee is not an heir.
Okay.
That's generally somebody you trust to oversee all of that and handle the property, sell it, make sure it gets to the right people.
Okay.
So is that the best thing to do, is have a trustee over your will, someone outside the family? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying it has to be outside the family. I said it has to be someone who's not an heir. Let me explain what I mean. Let's say, for example, you have children and you're leaving things to all of your children. It can be your sister, who maybe you're not leaving things to. It can be a close friend. But the reason I recommend that is because the executor is usually handling things like your funeral arrangements, things like that. The trustee is handling your financial affairs. And generally, having a different person handling the finances compared to the same person who's handling, the executor usually goes to the house, sees what's there, makes the inventory, does all of that, right? But then the trustee is the one who is making sure if the house is going to be sold, or if it's going, making sure the taxes get paid, all of that, because that's really an overwhelming thing for one person to do, as an executor to do anyway. Now, in a smaller estate, maybe it is just that executor.
Thank you.
But
thank you for the clarity. Yeah, thank you, Sherry, for the clarity. And as usual, we're running out of time. So if you could, Sherry, can we get you to agree to come back for a part 2 so we can pick up on some of the other pieces, because we're just scratching the surface. If we can get you to come back, and if that is good for you, can you at least close out with what message you'd like for this segment to have in terms of what you'd like to share with our audience about your business, or whatever message you'd like to leave with the audience?
I'd be glad to come back for part 2. And what I would like to leave with the audience is take the time to think about it now, discuss it now. It's better for you. It's better for your family. It'll give you peace of mind, and it will help them in the long run. Your power of attorney you need to do, your advanced healthcare directive do, and do your will.
Very good.
In a nutshell, I tell you, you have really shared some nuggets for certainly Jean and I. Jean has been talking about this for a while, and so I know that this has been helpful to her. I've been doing the same thing, and certainly every time we hear about a loss with one of our friends over the last 15 months, it's resonated with us in the importance of having everything in order. So, Attorney Sherry Allen, thank you so much for sharing your wealth of knowledge. We hope to see you the next time. And to our Forever Young audience, as you know, we like to say, age ain't nothing but a number, because you are young. Hope to see you next time. From Jean, David, and I, even with David's absence, we like to say thanks again for tuning in. This is a production of Hope TV. Our executive producer, Dr. E. Dewey Smith, our producer, Benton and Latin, and our wonderful team, Cammie and Taji. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.